So happy to have you on. Ever since you appeared in my inbox kind of magically, I thought you have an interesting background and I'm excited to share some of the modalities and some of your expertise. I noticed that on your website, this is Dr. Sharnael, guys. Oh yeah, I kind of like to have like a little conversation and I'll have the info in the bio, but you mentioned remembering yourself or helping people remember themselves. I'd love to clarify like what in your definition, like what that is, or is there a moment in your journey too where you had that epiphany of remembering yourself, or like a certain turning point?
Yeah, I actually got really ill.
Mm,
Um, and come to find out, a lot of people who are ill, it's from like trauma or some kind of emotional situation or multiple layers of multiple situations. They call it a conversion disorder, meaning your body starts to kind of take on different things. And it's really connected to the limbic system, which is behind your frontal lobe. And that limbic system's like the library of all that stuff. And it decides like what goes where, if it needs to store or if it defrags between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. and, all of that mess. And, I went to doctors for a long, long, long time trying to get answers and was just given pills and pushed out the door, for the next referral and the next, refill. And um yeah, I was not realizing how much um the subconscious things were happening, and how much that affected the conscious, because the subconscious is very, very literal, and the conscious mind, we may think we're doing what we're doing, but this guy down here, this other part of us, is like really running so many things, especially within our biofield. And that's what's creating all the time is, um we have this radiation and it's going out and it's beautiful and or not, and then there's this like a magnet that comes back to us. When I started really trying to hone in on getting well and realized that clearing the trauma made all of the issues go away as far as the physical stuff.
mm,
um it took some effort, as far as, I guess I shouldn't say effort because that makes it sound like I was working so hard, but I made some changes in my life, and some practical changes that I implemented within my practice of my daily life. And you would think I would learn after that, because it was such a big deal that I was like, oh, I finally feel better. It's been 7 years and I actually didn't even remember how good it is to feel better. But
mm,
years later, I went through this other opportunity to remember.
mm,
And um, yeah, it's just really, really weird how we can get so busy and caught up in everybody's stuff and all the things we quote do and all the 3D things that we think we're loving ourselves, but we're really not loving ourselves.
mm,
um, but to go back to your question, when I had this first case scenario situation that happened, I would say that would be like my first level of realizing that I had love for like everyone and everything, but not a whole lot of love for myself. And I didn't even know it. Like
mhm,
in my mind, I thought I had it and that I loved myself. And I actually was a conference speaker and still am, and taught all over the world about how, God loves you and you're different and you're important and you have destiny and you have a purpose. And then when I was introduced to this doctor, I kind of didn't want to go because I had given up on like all of it. And I kept having these dreams, and the dreams kept saying, all I remember really was, it's time to meet Will. It's time to meet Will.
mm,
It's time to meet Will. So I called my office and I'm like, hey, is there someone named Will that is going to be sponsoring a conference, or me? Or is there like a William or a Bill? And everyone kept saying no. And like this kept on happening. And I try to pay attention when I see things multiple times. And
mhm,
everyone kept going, no, we don't, nothing yet. So fast forward, I'm teaching a course on dreams and visions and real life in Mississippi. And the lady is seeing me with all my meds and just like you know, whatever. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that's a lot of medicine and all the mental gymnastics of take this with that and don't take these together and this has to be water and food and, you know." Anyway, she's like, "Go see this guy." So I go see the guy. I didn't want to go see the guy, but I was just like, "You know what? You could tell me put ketchup on your face and I would probably do it just to feel better." And it took a little push, but I go, and he was very different in his approach. You know, he had the medical side, but he's very kind of Tesla technology
Mm,
stuff, which is more mainstream now. And you know,
mhm.
with all the biohacking conferences and stuff. But back then, this is like 2000, late 2000.
Okay.
So not a lot about that. I mean, I just
Yeah.
felt like I walked into some like mad scientist, you know, place with all these weird machines and stuff. And he hooks me up and I filled out some basic paperwork and then he hands me this clipboard. And when he does, like the machine sounds like it died, like Pac-Man died, game over. And I was like, oh God, what does that mean? You know, and his face was just like, and he's scratching his head and he's looking panicked. And I'm like, that's not really cool that I, you know, it's like not what you want to
Mhm.
see your doctor doing.
No.
So, he's like, oh yeah, you know, normally sometimes that happens when people read the paper, but I've never seen anyone just like touch the paper and like have the same thing. And so I'm like, well, what's on the paper? So I like look at it and it's like, I am loved. I have a destiny. I'm beautiful. People love
Mm,
me. Everywhere I go, people love me. You know, it's like I have this mission. I have a purpose. There's a reason for me to be here. And I'm like, okay, like, what about that? You know? And he's like, well, basically, you're rejecting like everything on the paper. And I was like, what? And he, because this is what I'm teaching everywhere. Like,
yeah.
I'm mortified. I'm so scared. Like, please don't ask me what I do for a living. You know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a pro bowler. You know, it's like, um, yeah, and he didn't ask me, thank God, but he was just like, I said, "What do we do?" And he takes the clipboard back and he grabs a pen and he like writes something at the top and he's just, like thinking and he's thinking and then he's like, "Yeah." And then he hands it back to me and I look to see like, well, "What did you put on here?" And it says, "I will." That's it.
Mm,
And I'm like,
mm,
"Okay, what's that about?" And he's like, "I want you to get in the mirror and I want you to like look in your eyes every morning and I want you to say I will before all these statements. I
mm,
will that I'm beautiful, I
mm,
will that I'm loved, I will that I have purpose, you know, all this stuff. And he said until your body and like your subconscious actually remembers like all of these things are true. And then as soon as I hear that, I hear it's time to meet Will.
mm,
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes into this whole like frequency thing about how we have spirit and spirit is awesome. And then there's also like the power to override spirit with that free will. And he
mm,
even explained in his testing that free will is one of the most powerful forces. It's actually it's 400,000 times stronger than spirit. So, you know, basically the only thing that gets in our way is us.
yeah.
And when we just let things go with the flow and we do our thing, you know, things can be great. The field is clear, it's radiant, we get good matches coming back and mirroring back to us. But when we are like overriding authenticity, when we're overriding the you know, the weird programming can come in play, the subconscious can be like, "Oh no, you suck," you know, and you don't even know it's there. And
Mhm,
so I'm sitting there like, how in the world did I get to that point where I didn't even know that I didn't love myself, you know?
mhm,
Um, and then fast forward, there was another like level that was way even deeper and beyond, and it included like partnership and marriage and
mm,
basically with those changes, I had literally been estranged from my first love for 25 years and tried
mm,
like really, really hard to like connect with him on all these levels and was able to like not on purpose, but just work continuing to work on myself and doing some different things like boom, he's back in my life.
wow.
And that and it's a kind of a cool story, but yeah, so when we put out the hate, you know, if we hate ourselves, what I had seen is like I was basically sending these signals of like, I hate me, cancel clear. And so my love couldn't, like, he loved himself so much and he loved me so much
Mhm.
that there was like no resonance for him to even enter into that point. And once I really started, you know, doing self-care, taking steps, eating right, there's so many different ways that we can love ourselves. But I prefer love in action. Faith without works is dead, faith
Mhm.
with works is life. Then all of a sudden he could be on that frequency and come in, and I work with a lot of people on partnership and
Mhm.
getting back their first loves, and or
Mm.
if their new love that they've never had. But you know what I mean? Like, so love
Mhm.
and that subconscious thing, like, we just don't know what's down there sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that I think you said a lot of things that I wanna touch on. I'm curious how long it took you from, like, the time that you were repeating those things in the mirror for your subconscious to accept it as truth or, like, or that you really believed it. I think that's so true too, or, like, it reminds me that I think I told someone, I was like, "Well," he was talking about, like, going to a treatment facility or of some kind, and I was like, "Well, I don't think you can only love me to the depth that you can love yourself. And so, like, of course, I want you to grow that love. And if it means like us not being together or not right now or ever, then like I want you to find that. So I think that that's neat that y'all refound or rekindled something like after you had grown that level of love.
Yes. Even though it
Mhm.
was 25 long ass years.
Yeah. Oh.
Um, and the other thing that happened is, I know this is, like, maybe beyond and weird and whatever, but I had went through, like, a cancer scare
Mm.
during that time, and that second time, and you would think I would know better, but, I I thought I wasn't gonna be here, and when I got
Mm.
the diagnosis, literally that's the first person that came to my mind. And we hadn't been, at all for 25 years. And I was like, oh, well, that's crazy that that's who I'm thinking about. And I just wanted to kind of make things right. And before I
Mhm.
go, kind of deal with
Yeah.
it. And so I had talked to my mentor and told them about what was happening. And he was just like, he knew my history, and I had just, like, graduated from, like, bigger asshole to bigger asshole. Like, honestly, it was
Yeah.
just, like, crazy. And, he was like, "Was your dad a prick?" That's that's what he said. I'm just being honest. And I was like, "No, actually, my
All
dad,"
is welcome here.
like, "No, he's actually pretty awesome." And he was like, "Well, go back and tell me, did was there ever a good one in there?" And I was like, "Yeah, my first love." He's like, "Well, tell
Mm.
me about it." And he's like, it's like, "Yeah, we kinda broke up, we were engaged, we were together 5 years, and then we just, like, decided, well, I decided, like, to change the wedding, like, constantly." And I think the 3rd time he was like, "Okay, what's up?" And,
Mm.
um, yeah, so we took a recess, and that recess ended up being me going out and partying and being stupid and just, like, not being the best. And he would go and, like, it was a small town, so he would, like, see me there and whatever and kinda make sure I wouldn't do anything stupid, but from a distance. And my roommate one night was like, "Oh, there he is again." And I said some stupid things and threw the ring at him, and I even said, like, "Oh, I don't love you anymore," and, like, really stupid things. And that was it. He was just like, "Okay,"
Mm.
and gave me the ring back, and he was like, "All right, bye, I'm out of here." And, like, he quit school, and, like, I didn't see him anymore. And that was how it ended. So it was just like, that's a shitty end. And, I thought I'd meet him at homecoming, or, you know, marriages and weddings and, proms and, like, reunions and, deaths. There was funerals from our friends and stuff.
Mm.
And, like, he would just never go if he knew I was going to be there. And it really sucked. And so I was like, well, how am I supposed to, like, anyway, so the dude that I was working with, the mentor of mine, Robert Stevens, he was like, "Go find him and fix it." Just, well, he didn't say go find him. He was like, "Talk to him and fix it." And so I was
Mhm.
just like, "Okay," I've tried to do that for like 25 years, but he won't show up. And so I tried to find like his mom and his brothers, and nothing. And I finally found like a profile picture on Facebook, but no picture. It was just like a profile of like his name and, like, this blank face,
Mhm.
no cover. So I'm like, "Okay." I sent a message and I'm like, "Hey, it's me." I just need like 15 minutes. Like I'll fly to you, I'll drive to you. I don't know where you are. You know, it's kind of time sensitive because I didn't know if I was going to be here
Yeah,
anymore.
wow.
Um, and like not a whole, like, he was like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Yeah, this isn't really a text conversation. Can I see you in real life?" I didn't want it to be a phone call.
Mhm.
I'll go anywhere you are, and it is kind of a big deal. And like crickets, zero. And I was like, so yeah, so days go by and I finally like a week, nothing. And so I called Bob, my mentor, and I'm like, well, what do I
Mhm.
do if people don't talk to me? Like, how do we fix? Because I didn't want. I was also seeing like this in my kids. Like my
Mhm.
oldest daughter had been with her boyfriend since 10 years old. And when I was out walking, I kind of got this like idea, like, oh shit, because I was walking in my neighborhood and the my daughter was engaged to the man the kid across the street who happened to be living in my ex's old house.
Mm.
And they were the age that we were when we broke up, and she was talking about breaking off the engagement.
Mm.
Like complete patterns. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I don't want them to do this. Like she's going to regret this. This is going to suck for her. She's going to spend all your years wishing. So I didn't want to repeat that. So I was like, how do I
Mhm.
fix this before I go? And so Robert was like, you don't have to talk to him. What are you talking about? Like, everything's
Mm.
energy. And I was like, what do
Mm.
you mean everything's energy? And he's just like, just go and walk around and act like you're talking to him, say everything. So
Oh.
I did that. And then I laid down in the driveway. I looked up at the stars and I was like, okay, God, fix it. Like, thank you for fixing this and my family and whatever. And literally, I'm not even kidding you. My phone was right here and like rang and it was him. And he was just like, okay, I'll talk to you. I'll meet with you. And I was like, oh my God. So we did meet and everything kind of like shifted because I was loving me and
Mhm.
I was forgiving myself. I forgave, the whole situation. Like that's a lot of energy,
Mhm.
to just like happen. And um after I ended up getting healed, and that's another thing, but I got healed to the point where when I went back to the doctor to confirm everything was healed, they were using all these machines again, and I'm like, "Can you, like, muscle test me and see, like, what the situation is?" Because I was married at the time,
Mhm.
and, I kept having these dreams to take the ring off.
Mm.
And that was, like, against everything in me because 'cause I'm pretty legalistic, and they were like, "Yes, it says take the ring off." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Can you just see if I was ever married to this guy?" And it came back, "No." And I was like, "Okay, 7 years I've been with this asshole," and he had left the day I got diagnosed too. So we were
Wow.
separated, and we had been, like, in the paperwork and everything, but he was just like, "I'm outta here," as soon as he found out I was sick. And so I was like,
Wow.
yeah, so I was like, "Can you see, like, if I was ever married to this guy?" And it was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, shit," so then it was like, "Well, was I ever married?" "Yes." I was like, "Okay, please don't tell me it was my first husband because 'cause I've had 2." And it was like, "No." And I'm like, "That was 13 years of, like, life on paper being with this
Mhm.
other not so great fun person." And, so I was like, "Okay, when was I married?" And it came back November 7th, 1987. Totally meant nothing to me. I was just like, "What the heck?" Well, fast forward when I do meet with Brian, he, he has this, like, book bag from football. He was a football player, and he had, like, every note to every letter we had ever written each other, like, cassette tapes that he had made and I had made, like, matching clothes, jewelry, like, all the stuff he had kept, pictures of him and my grandparents and my dad and, Sadie Hawkins and homecoming and proms, and he had this calendar, and it was, like, 87, 88, 89, like, a whole year, like, bird's eye view of like 3 years.
Mhm.
And his birthday was circled, mine was circled, and then November 7th was circled. And or no, it was 6th. And I was like, "What is that? Who's is that a birthday?" And he was like, "You don't remember?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "That's the day you came to my football practice and you put your phone number and everything in your picture on my truck, and then we had our first date the next day." And I was like, "What?" And so, like, here we are in high school, 1987. I'm 17.
Mhm.
Like, nothing was going on physically at all. Our first date, and here we are married. Like, my body, my subconscious, whatever
Mm.
registered that was the marriage day, 1987, November 7th.
Wow.
And I later had him tested, and he had had 2 marriages the same time I did, breakups the same time, kids the same time. They're the same ages.
Wow.
Um, and he was never married to those people. He was only married to me.
Like through
Same
the
day.
body? Wow.
So I'm like, what is marriage? It really just fucked with my mind because I was like, I don't even know
Yeah.
what anything is anymore. I'm so upside down. But going back to the whole love thing is like that was a huge pivotal thing. It's like when I finally loved me
Mhm.
and put me first, then everything started to fall in place. And there's
Mm.
a scripture. I'm not a big scripture person, but I do look at it like quantum physics.
Yeah.
And there's a scripture that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you."
Mm.
And this is my kingdom, and this is
Mm.
our kingdom, this orb,
Mhm.
this field.
Mm.
And when we listen to those little GPS voices, God positioning system things that are just like, "Hey, call your mom," or "Hey, don't go to that party," or "Hey," when we seek ye first, then all these things will be added unto you. But it's like the steps that you have to take first for those things to fall into place. And
Mm.
I needed to do that for me, for all these things to finally come in my field.
Yeah. No, I love that you said too, the GPS God positioning system. I'm not, yeah, I grew up Southern Baptist, but I've just recently started reading more scripture, and looking at it through that lens. Like I paused because I was like, wow, that sounds like a one that was recent on my like 365 Science of Mind book, with Ernest Holmes. Well, you mentioned a couple times that like dreams stood out to you, or that dreams and visions, were very pivotal. And like they are for me too. Like I know that if something is brought to my attention through like dreamscape, I kind of look at it, I'm like, okay, what are you trying to communicate to me? Or
Yeah,
like, what am I trying to take away from this? Is there anything that you'd recommend that say someone's like, okay, but I don't dream or I don't remember them? Is there anything that you recommend to like help help remember their dreams at all?
absolutely. There
Yeah.
is a essential oil called clary sage
Mm.
that I did not know was for that. I had
Oh.
a miscarriage, and it's also good to eliminate a baby if you're losing a baby. And it's great for pain and
Mm.
hormones. And I was in the middle of all that, and someone had
Mm.
given me that and another thing for pain, another essential oil for pain. And that night I had 7 dreams and remembered every single one of them. And I was just like, "What the heck?" So, I kinda thought, well, maybe it's just because what I'm going through, and that was, like, God's way of just, like, helping me,
Mhm.
but I mean, I do dream a lot, but I had not dreamed that many times and remembered all the details. So that second night, same thing happened. The third night, I actually went home finally, and the same thing happened again. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm looking this up. And one of the benefits, I was going to say side effects,
Mm.
but side benefits is dream and dream recall.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, this is going to be in my box like all the time. I'm using
Yeah.
this forever, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
and a big
Good.
thing too is, like, writing shit down is really
Mhm.
important. Um, if you or recording it in some way, I say kinetically is better.
Mhm.
Put a notebook next to my bed on purpose, just, like, with the intention that I'm going to dream and I'm going to remember and I'm gonna write it down. Because when we do get up and actually write it, a lot of times we'll get, like, snippets, but the minute we start, like, kinetically
Mm.
putting our body into it, and then, like, our mind is into it, our eyes are visually looking at what we're writing, there's, like, more stuff will pop. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, also in that, and he was wearing a red shirt, and then he went around the corner, and
Mm.
that called me," and you just get, like, more and more and more and more and more.
Cool. Yeah, the more you like flex the muscle. I love that. I do it on my phone. I want to do it, like, actually writing out, but I feel like sometimes I just reach and have, like, my little dream journal and, like, yeah, some of them I'm like, "Wow, why am I dreaming about this person so much?" I loved your practice too, or I'm calling it a practice, that I think that it could be a cool practice too to, of saying what you need to say or making amends, whether it's to that person or not, to, like, clear the energy. It kinda makes me want to have, like, a role play situation, or, like, like, pretend like I'm in the kitchen or something and like I'm having this conversation with someone, and see what arises or what transpires after like speaking my piece or something like that. Um, and you touched on one other thing that kind of spurred a question that I had on my list here about being in a pattern, or like being, and I wrote down, it's like, well, if people are feeling stuck in like a negative pattern, whether it's health or business or relationships, like what do you suggest to kind of either identify the pattern or get out of the cycle?
Yeah, that's a really good one, and there's a lot of people who feel that way,
Yeah.
so it's pretty prevalent, on the planet. When I had an encounter in 2008, and, these 2 things, I don't know if they're angels, I don't know what it is, but these 2 things came, and I was just got downloaded with, like,
Mm.
formulas and words that I never heard of that I had to look up, and, like, just graphs and things like that, and
Mhm.
part of it showed me, like, how the biofield works, how this
Mhm.
technology works, and how the subconscious works, and connecting the 2, and there was just a lot of, like, crazy information that came through, and for me, after that, it seemed like it heightened some things with the way I hear and the way I see, and,
Mm.
like, usually I can listen to someone with maybe, like, 3 or 4 minutes, and I can go, "Oh, here's the snag," and
Mm.
or, like, "This is what's off here, let's
Mhm.
redirect and or implement some new things and kinda like, shift things," and I actually do this live, um, I just did it in the Conscious Life Expo with, like,
Oh, I
200
love I oh, cool. I love the Conscious Life Expo too.
yeah, I just came back and taught there,
Cool.
and we did have some live demos of, like, right up front, we outcome mapped, and
Mm.
people had miracles happen, like, there, and then also I've already had, like, 36 people contact me and say, like, "Oh my god, this happened now, and this happened now," and whether it's
Cool.
money or partnership or business or family relational things, so that's one tool that, you could book a session and
Mhm.
we could do an outcome map. I actually have a month from now, April 6th, I have an online workshop where I'm gonna teach people how to do it on their
Oh,
own,
cool.
so they don't necessarily need me, but they can set up a session.
Mhm.
So that's one way, and then biofeedback is really good.
Mhm.
Biofeedback will give diagnostics not just emotionally, not just psychically, but electronically. It'll look at vitamins, it'll look at different stressors or sensitivities, hormones.
Cool.
Maybe you need to do a liver cleanse or whatever. And I say all that because it does cross over with emotions and the psychic part with the physical. And I include that because, like parasites, for example, when we have parasites, there is a signal that goes out that basically is like, "Hey, I'm a good host, cancel clear."
Mm.
And when we send that signal out, there's a radiation, but there's also a magnet. So everything that we think, talk about, feel, it all has this radiation and it all has a magnet. And there's other things in it that go into play, the subconscious, the ancestral, the cells, the organs, like everything has a radiation.
Mm.
And so when we get these reports, we customize certain frequencies to send back to the person to start getting the ball rolling, to harmonize maybe something that needs a little bit more higher frequency, or bring down some of things, or to clear
Mm.
some things altogether. And when I started doing biofeedback for myself, I was in the cancer situation, and really used it for physical, but I didn't realize how much it would cross over with, like, business and, like,
Mhm.
money, and, like, even with the parasite thing, it's like, if if that is an issue and we're sending that out and we don't realize it,
Mhm.
then people are
Mm.
siphoning off or taking advantage and doing these things, and, like, I could be all like, "I'm, doing the best I can, I'm being loyal, I'm being a good friend, I work every day, I'm so," and then, like, these negative patterns keep happening. They're like, why is this happening?
Mhm.
And here it is, like us putting out this signal, even
Yeah.
with the prior thing that I was talking to you about, I couldn't figure out why I kept collecting these assholes that lie.
Mhm.
But if I was technically married November 7th, 1987,
Mm.
then I was the one who was
Yeah.
lying, sending out a lie signal and
Mhm.
collecting more liars so we could all hate each
Mm.
other together and all lie together.
Mm.
Like, so again, it all starts with us. It's all us.
Mhm.
But I've seen a lot of people. We do like group cleanses, and we've been doing it for years. Well, a year and a half now. And there's one specific product that I do a case study on, and the exit program or the exit questions that people were giving, especially at the beginning. I'm like, well, what else are you seeing? They're like, oh, that narcissistic boyfriend quit calling, or
Mm.
our family got back together,
Mm.
or the check came in the mail, or this person owed me money from 3 decades ago, and then all of a sudden it's here, or my bank account is different, or I got a job opportunity. And I was just like, you wouldn't see all that being correlated, but it actually really is when we clear up this field. Like,
Mhm.
anything's possible because there's all these probabilities and opportunities that are just like waiting to get that invite and that magnet.
Mhm.
And so it's about us identifying what's going on and then making those slight shifts and then just waiting for things to come in.
Cool. No, I totally see a connection with my guy, or I've noticed in myself with like self-worth and money and bank account. The more my like the self-worth is stronger, the bigger my bank account. And like I'm like, I don't know how to connect those dots, but I'm like, it's true though. And like, but it's interesting too. It's like I can be so conscious about my words or language or thoughts. However, but if I have like a parasite percolating in there, I might not know that I'm giving off that signal, right? So that's interesting. What does a biofeedback even look like? I don't even know what kind of test that is. Is it like is it a stool? Is it blood? Like, how do you get the reading
Yeah.
or, yeah.
We get like your picture so we can have
Okay.
like an actual aura,
Mhm.
like what's going on in the field, and
Mhm.
we can pick that up. And then we do evox, which is voice recording,
Oh, cool.
because we can figure out, maybe what's missing, what needs more
Mm.
strength, what needs to be added, what needs to be taken away. And then just a few other things. So someone will send that to me. We let the machine run like 30 different reports.
Mm.
They customize frequencies to send back to the person. And then I always send a link for people if you're interested. And I prefer
Mhm.
that is that people do a consultation with it, because then
Mhm.
I can go over the reports with the person and kind of pinpoint like some things that I'm looking at,
Cool.
that may be supportive to the person, as a naturopath and an energy
Mhm.
worker. Also, the reports are kind of hard to understand if you don't
Yeah.
know what you're looking at, because it's just like a bunch of colors and maps and like
Mhm.
things that I look at all the time. So I could be like, oh, that's this, and this. And
Cool.
after you go over a consult, you pretty much have homework. You know what you're supposed to be doing, you know how to clear it. And you won't need a consult every time. Like if you get any
Mhm.
follow-up scans, you would just keep getting scans if you want. They
Cool.
recommend like 2 to 3 follow-up scans just to keep entrainment, because
Mhm.
frequencies will come to the field. They'll pierce through the body, so this radiation changes, which changes that. And then it's kind of like riding a bike. Like, remember those training wheels on the back?
Mhm.
You don't need those forever, right? But to have something to kind of retrain the field and bring that entrainment, when you're riding, you may go this way or this way a little bit, but then like eventually you find your rhythm and you're like, oh, this is the new me. This is the new
Cool.
frequency. I'm good with this. I don't need these wheels. I'm good. Thanks a lot. And now I'm going to go make
Mhm.
money and be with the love of my life and like
Mm.
have a good fun time and have kids and do whatever your mission is.
Yeah. Cool. And you can do those virtually too? Just
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, I just wanna make sure, and
Yeah.
clarify. Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I love exploring the different modalities and yeah, who knows? I'm like, okay, maybe let's figure out if and what is holding me back, you know?
Absolutely.
Especially if it's like something that I'm not aware of consciously. I know I really want to expand on this too. Was like looking, I love that you use the language like science behind miracles, or I'd love to expand on the science behind miracles, or how do you even begin to speak, or how one begins to speak the language of miracles.
Yeah, I mean, there is conscious language, and there is a lot of ownership in creating. You know, we are creatures
Mhm.
and we create. And some people are creating very
Mm.
consciously
Mhm.
with strategy and intent and waking up and being on purpose. And then maybe you're like me who just kind of went with the flow and didn't really know the subconscious was creating all this stuff for me, or parasites or fungus, or, you know, I had this like whole beginning of my life where I just felt like things were happening to me, Kristen. You
Mm.
know, it was like this sucky feeling like shit, this is going on still. And like, why is this, you know, just really couldn't understand. But, you know, when I realized I'm the author, I'm the creator, and it was kinda depressing at first because 'cause I'm like, "Oh my god, I wasted so much time."
Yeah, a lot of
Uh,
responsibility there.
yeah, yeah. But then the other part of me was really excited because I was like, "If I can, like, drive myself to the ground, like, almost to the point of death,
Mhm.
then what can I do being awake and aware and with intent?" And,
Mhm.
you know, just literally reversing some of this stuff. I was like, "Whoa," and now I get to do it with thousands of people all over the world, you know, so
Cool.
I'm constantly hearing about people's miracles and I don't know how many marriages and engagements. We did an I Am My Divine Partnership event online, like live, and literally someone got proposed to on literally on the thing. Another person had been estranged for like 8 years or something and got a text like
Wow.
right on the thing. Like they were like, oh my God. And they're like, yeah, it's fun because I just like being a part of like somehow just you know, seeing into people's lives
Mhm.
and seeing how things flip and switch for people.
Mhm. Well, I mean, how beautiful to, like, witness, like, those miracles happening too, and the possibility that opens up from that one miracle. Like, if one
Absolutely.
thing shifts, it's like, "Oh, what else can?"
Yeah,
Or I just love that. I definitely
yeah. And
like it.
I always say you cannot pee in the pool and hope it doesn't get everywhere. You know, people think like, oh, if my thyroid's messed up, let's work on the thyroid, and I'm like, no, let's work on the whole endocrine system.
Mm.
And it's the same thing with energy. It's not like this is the, you know, partnership energy area and this is the, you know, financial
Mm.
area. Like if you could clear this, it clears this entire field with
Mm.
possibilities of good things everywhere, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, like, the interconnectedness of it all versus, like,
Because
the
think about it,
hyper focus.
health is wealth.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when
Totally.
we're healthy, we feel good, we put out a new vibe, and people are attracted to that. People are attracted to love. You start collecting new friends, you know, and the more we move into finances and opportunities, then that just goes up higher and higher and higher. I mean, this field is very transferable. So being around certain people is really important. If you have like really negative friends and you know all that, I'm not a big proponent of like, you know, cancel everybody and stop talking. You know, I really hate that to be honest. But you know, just know your boundaries and be
Mhm.
good with your boundaries and like, you know, hey, if maybe if she calls and you're having a moment and you're like, no, not right now. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes you gotta be in a good spot to deal. But then
For sure. I had to
and then
make a request one time.
what's that?
I said I had to make a request one time. I'm like, "Hey, I'm sensitive in this area right now. Can we not talk about this
Yeah,
topic?"
yeah.
I'm like, I'm here and receptive. I'm here for you, but not in this in this area right now, at least temporarily,
And
because
that's
'cause I'm
self-love,
sensitive."
you know?
Yeah.
That's self-love, and that's unconditional love, and when
Mm,
you put that vibe out for you, then you get more matches to
mm,
that, and
mm.
that's really good. That's the very thing we're talking about. Good for you.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, well, I mean, took me a while to get there. No. Is that so, say somebody just came to the awareness, like, that, "Oh, like, oh my god, I've been creating all of this." All of the feedback. Would you suggest, like, the starting with the biofeedback? What would you or, like, what would you suggest, like, I don't know, 1 to 3 things to someone that's just like, "Okay, I'm gonna start taking
Biofeedback
yeah.
biofeedback is big,
Okay.
just because I'm not even the one who's seeing it. Like
Mhm.
it's very deep in depth and all the stuff. Reading this book, there's been so many people who've had miracles, the science of
Oh,
miracles
cool.
that goes into a lot of this. And or doing a map session because I'll get right down to the subconscious. Like in a map session, you
Mhm.
find out like what what you're putting out pretty quick. And then, and like with me, with this guy, with the doctor that I was working with, I didn't
Mhm.
know that I didn't love myself. Like,
Mm.
and I taught everybody how to love themselves, but
Mhm.
like, it's bizarro that the whatever our greatest weaknesses will be your greatest strength.
Yeah.
And so if we can just find where those weaknesses are and flip them, I
Mm.
mean, that's the area you're going to excel in the most. So the
Mm.
people who've had like lack, they're going to be the richest people on the planet, like when they get that cleared. Right? Yeah. Or if partnership for me sucks, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, now we're going to flip that, and or
and
health.
thrive.
And now I get
Mhm.
to help
Mm.
like all kinds of people in all of those areas. And who would have ever thought that I would, I was just a kid thinking, whatever. And now I get to do this worldwide. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't even in my idea box of what to do when I grew up. And I'm still
Yeah.
trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. But yeah,
Good.
I would say those three things are huge, and
Mhm.
just a good starting point of like really getting some traction on some
Mhm.
changes in your life.
Cool. I know I saw that you wrote multiple books. Is that book, The Science of Miracles, the one that you'd say is a good starting point
That's
or
the
to start?
newest one, and it
Okay.
has probably the most information about the things we're talking about today. But
Okay.
I have some other things on like the seer anointing, keys to third heaven, the keto book. I have a book on signs and like synchronicities, and
Oh, I love signs and synchronous. I feel like when we start paying attention to them, they happen more often,
they
more
do.
frequently, for sure. I have a note in my phone that I keep. I'm like, okay, one's like gratitude, one's synchronicities, and in a dream journal. But I feel like, yeah, sometimes I'll be like, I'll put the date and then what happened, and it's really interesting whenever I start to
Well,
notate
whatever we
them.
focus on, we make room for.
Mm,
So,
mm,
it's being aware of what you're thinking about.
mm,
It's like I was just like on autopilot half the time. I would literally be driving wherever, and I'd be like, how did I get here? Like,
mm,
so bad. I mean, not good. But when we take inventory and we can be present, when we could slow down, because revelation comes out of rest. And when we just
mm,
like really hone in, get grounded, get into nature, take your shoes off, get outside in the grass or the sand, or take a vacation, get by the water if you have water or mountains or trees. There's so much
mm,
coding and different things within nature too that can there's a lot of information there that if we allow it, it will come in, and you'll have
mm.
like inspiration and understanding of things that you maybe wouldn't see a few minutes ago.
I love that quote. I'm going to just say it again. Revelation comes out of rest. Love that quote. And then the other one that you said that like kind of made me sit up taller was what you pay attention to, you make room for.
Absolutely.
Those are two powerful little notes. Is there anything else that you want to drop in or share? I have a few more questions, but also like if people want to connect with you or work with you or dive deeper into like the world of healing and truth, like anything else you want to offer up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm appreciative of you and your
Oh,
work.
thanks.
And I love that you are taking this platform to really bring education, to bring connection, to help other people. I mean, there's a lot of people who like go through their version and they don't want to be like out there because they're not perfect and they're not, all this stuff. And I feel like people like you who are like kind of just on the journey like I am, and you're just like,
Mhm.
as I get things, I'm going to share them. As I get things, I'm going
Mhm.
to share them. Like that helps the collective in such a powerful way. And it also gives courage and confidence for other people to like maybe take a risk or do something
Mm.
that they normally wouldn't do. And there's so much negativity. And so like something like what you're doing
Mm.
brings more light and helps people, to feel hope and
Mm.
encouragement. And but yeah,
Well, thank you. That
lots
brings tears to my eyes.
of
Yeah.
well, I don't know if people know how much work is involved in this, like setting
There
up
is a
everything,
yeah.
graphics and uploading and technology and Riverside
Mhm.
and Chrome and
All the things.
and people cancel, and then you're like, what? And then just it's a lot. So for those of you guys watching, support this girl. Like and comment, share, like get this
Oh, thank
out because
you.
you don't know how this could help someone else. You could be
True.
it's not always finances that support people. It's like being kind and
Yeah.
sharing and loving and like getting the word out and stuff. So you guys can help her with that too.
Yeah, I'd love, and if there's anything that brought in an insight or like an increase in awareness or like a little mini miracle or a miracle for you, I'd love to hear about it too. I'd like to, I like those are like what kind of helps keep me put fuel in the tank to celebrate to keep on going is
Yeah.
like hearing those things or the feedback from it.